I'm Bob Spinozzi, and today I'm with registered dietitian Jessica Peters of Emerson Hospital. We're going to talk about weight loss and some new trends in food for the new year. Thank you so much for being with me.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, we're at this time of year. The hot topic is losing weight. So tell us about some of the things that people get right when they lose weight.
Well, I think especially, nowadays there's a bigger push towards eating more things like vegetables. And that's something that almost everybody can do. It's an easy way to help with weight loss. We know from studies people eat sort of the same amount of food, whether it's something that's high in calories or low in calories. It's about sort of amounts and weight of food. So if you replace high calorie foods with things like vegetables that don't have a lot of calories, but have lots of fiber and water, you're still eating the same amount of food, but less calories. So it's an easy way of feeling full and not eating as much.
Then I find there's another issue, Jessica, that people never used to talk about, and that's you have your good carbs and your bad carbs, your good fats and your bad fats.
Yes.
So tell us some of the good carbs and fats that we should be eating, leaning towards.
So in terms of carbohydrates, yes. I mean, there's definitely certain carbohydrates that are going to have more fiber and more nutrients. So I always think of the carbohydrates we want to focus on are things that are more natural. Like the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, potatoes, sweet potatoes. These are things that are going to be more nutrient dense. And carbohydrates get a really bad rap, especially right now. The low carbohydrate diet is, king. And that goes through cycles, but it is healthy to have carbohydrates in your diet. So you don't necessarily need to avoid it completely. In terms of fats, our plant-based fats are still promoted over, animal-based fats. So if it's liquid at room temperature, like olive oil is a very common one we still promote. That's going to have more health benefits and be healthier for you. Just like the avocado. The avocado is a similar type of fat as olive oil. So they're both monounsaturated fats. So those are going to be better for us.
Now, this is an example of something that I would shy away from because it's high in calories, but it's the good fat.
Well, and that's kind of where everything comes down to. It's all about portions too. Just because something's good for us doesn't mean we need to eat a lot of it. And fat is one of those things where we need some to be healthy. But that doesn't mean we need to have 3 avocados a day either.
No.
And that's where sometimes people get in trouble when they're both trying to lose weight and eat healthier, is figuring out where that balance is.
Can you tell us some of the foods that do give you more of a full feeling?
Sure. So protein is one of those things. So when you have foods that are high in protein, like chicken, fish, even lean steak or lean pork, you feel full longer. So it delays hunger from coming back. So that's a really positive thing to add into your meals. And that could also be more carbohydrate-based sources like dairy, low-fat dairy, and beans and legumes. And then fiber is another one. So if you're including the whole grains, so if you're having whole wheats, farro or some of these other types of grains, quinoa.
Quinoa.
Yeah. That's going to also delay digestion and keep you full longer. So especially that combination, you're getting the fiber and the protein together, helps with hunger. And vegetables are, again, another great way of getting that fiber in. So,
We've mentioned fat here a couple of times, and I've heard about this Keto Diet.
yes.
What is your opinion on it, and is it safe?
So I always kind of laugh when I hear about keto because it's one of the most common things. And I will say for about 2 years, every time someone hears, oh, you're a dietitian, let me ask you a question. And I just interrupt them at this point. I'm like, are you about to ask me about keto? And they're like, yes. I'm like, all right. So keto is not new. It has been around for about 100 years. It first started out as a diet to help treat epilepsy in children. So it came out in the 1920s. It lost favor for a while and it's kind of come back a little bit, but now it's kind of gone mainstream as a way of losing weight. And the sort of premise of it is a very restricted carbohydrate diet. Sort of like if anyone's done Atkins, years ago, that first stage of Atkins is about a restriction to about 50 grams of carbohydrates in a whole day. To put that sort of in food terms, that's about 2 small pieces of bread in an entire day. That means you would not be able to eat any other carbs. So with a keto diet, you're that restricted in carbohydrates, but then instead of eating other foods like protein or chicken, you're supposed to replace those calories in your diet with fat. So that's where you're going to end up eating a lot more of things like olive oil, nuts, avocado. If you're not restricting animal fats, it's going to be more butter. Bacon is kind of where people end up going with it. So keto can, I believe, be a diet that's probably fine health-wise. I think the restriction is a little difficult to do long-term just because the variety of foods is so limited. I mean, we live in a society where there's a lot of social aspects to eating, and if you're having a hard time finding something to eat on a menu, or you go to a friend's house and they're not offering something that sort of fits that macronutrient breakdown, that's going to be hard to participate, and that affects things.
But is the keto something I might try on my own, or is there medical supervision involved here?
I would recommend doing it medically supervised, just so that you make sure that, one, are you incorporating healthy foods? Are you having a good balance of foods so that you're not developing any deficiencies? When you take away carbohydrates, you are taking away some basic nutrients and vitamins that we see in fruits and vegetables and whole grains, like your B vitamins, vitamin C. These are things that we need to be healthy. The other aspect is, your medical history. If you have a very strong, maybe cardiac history, where maybe you've had a history of heart attacks or a strong family history of things like that, then it may be a diet that's going to incorporate a lot of saturated fat is not going to be beneficial to you. And the other thing that can happen when you go very low in carbohydrates is you do lose a lot of water. And that's just natural when you kind of use up all of your sugar stores in your body. You shed a lot of water, and that can create some electrolyte imbalances as well. So you want to make sure that you have a doctor or a dietitian trained in doing, keto or low carb diets, helping you, making sure that it's something that's appropriate and safe long term.
Yeah, this sure doesn't sound like anything you want to try on your own.
I don't get it, but but people seem to enjoy it. But I think it kind of comes down to, too, when you cut out certain foods from your diet and eating more protein, eating more high-fat foods, and eating, the vegetables that you do eat are going to be those very fibrous ones. People will say, I'm not as hungry, I don't have as many cravings, because they're not eating the sugar anymore. So they do find it's helpful. It's just maybe, I think, a little bit too extreme for most people to sustain long-term. I mean, you think about any of the foods that we always feel like we have to give up when we're dieting, it's almost always sugar or carbohydrates, right? It's like, I always tell people, our happy foods are sugar, potatoes, bread, rice, pasta. Processed foods,
yeah,
crackers. Yeah. And so if those are not part of the diet, it's easier to lose weight because you're not overeating. Nobody ever eats too much chicken, really. I mean, it's like there's a stopping point with chicken. Nobody has a bad day and needs to eat broccoli. They're not like, oh my God, I can't wait to go home and eat some broccoli. It's just not the same relationship as we do with carbohydrates.
There's another approach, the weight-inclusive approach, healthy at every size. Let's talk about that and how it affects nutrition and weight loss.
So the sort of healthy at every size movement is becoming more popular, especially in the sort of the realm of dietitians. And we're kind of talking about it more. And the kind of breakdown, it's multifaceted. So part of that is, going back to teaching more intuitive or mindful eating. So you're encouraging people not to sort of categorize foods as good or bad, or to say you're a bad person when you eat these things, or shaming people for wanting to eat something like ice cream at night because it's delicious. It's more about figuring out what is this person's relationship with food, how do we encourage them to both enjoy eating without guilt and shame, but also making sure that they're in tune with their body's needs so that they're also well nourished. One of the challenges with when patients are on restrictive diets, or people are cutting out things from their diet, is they might actually not be getting all of their nutrition. And if you're not, your body's not well nourished, it just doesn't work properly, and you're not going to feel good, and you're not going to be as happy. And so it's teaching people how to nourish their bodies instead of just thinking of their bodies as how much do I weigh.
Yeah, so there's a lot more to it than just counting calories and.
I joke with patients all the time when they come in, but I'm like, if we all just ate when we were hungry and stopped when we were full, you would never need a dietitian. It's so much more complicated than that. So when we look at the healthy at every size, it's both body inclusivity. when a patient comes in and they're like, well, I want to be a size 2, that may not be an expectation we should be pushing on people, that you need to look like an Instagram model in order to be healthy. Being thin is not the same as being healthy. You can have someone who's a very small size and they're smoking a pack of cigarettes and drinking vodka for dinner. That doesn't tell you anything. Or they might actually, their body might really need to be 140 or 150 pounds to be healthy, but this person is doing behaviors that are dangerous to maintain a very low weight. That's not something we want to aspire to. So sometimes breaking it down for people and saying, when was the time that you felt really good? You felt strong, you felt healthy, you felt like you could do things you really wanted to do with your life, and you had good movement. And when we kind of break it down that way, sometimes we find the numbers completely different. And then patients will say, well, my doctor really told me I need to be under this weight. And I'm like, but did that feel good when you were at that weight? And they'll say no. And I said, well, let's worry about getting you to a place that feels good and that you're healthy. And let's not worry so much about the number. So, it really is about figuring out, what is the point of the weight loss? What are you going to gain from that weight loss? What is really important to you? And how does losing weight get you there, so that we can really focus on, what does the patient want for quality of life? If it's walking easier without joint pain, that's the goal. It's not the number on the scale. It's getting them to a place where they have comfort when they can move. So it's accepting different bodies. It's, as a health community and just a societal community, making sure we're not projecting biases on people who struggle with their weight, or maybe overweight, or struggling with obesity, so that we're not shaming them for being a certain way, because we don't know what their story is, and that's not like a flaw in their character because of their size. And I think it's one of those things where we say it's the last sort of socially acceptable form of discrimination, is making fun of somebody or treating someone badly because of their size. And it's something that happens in both the medical community and the community at large. So as health clinicians, we have to be really careful about checking any biases we have at the door, and not allowing patients to feel anything except support and comfort, and that they're in a safe space so that they can really talk about, what they want. So that's another part of it. The other part of it is promoting services. We talk about weight loss and obesity and all these things as sort of just like, well, what are you eating and what are you doing for exercise? But it also comes down to, how do you feel about yourself? Do you have all the financial resources you need to cook healthy food, access healthy food? Do you have, anything going on that you might need help with for behavioral health? So there's all sorts of facets to being healthy that aren't specifically just about weight, that also affects the weight. Someone might want to exercise or go for walks, but maybe they live in a neighborhood that's not safe to do it. Maybe there aren't sidewalks. I've had patients where they lived in dangerous neighborhoods, and they're like, well, if I go outside, I'm worried I'm going to get shot, like something actually violent. So for me to be like, well, you should go for a walk every day for 30, 60 minutes, that's not a realistic option for that patient. And so we need to, as clinicians, be more creative and, as a community, figure out how to get these opportunities to people who maybe are more disadvantaged, before we start shaming them for not following through with something that they really aren't in control of. So it's kind of encompassing health away from weight, but saying, what does this person need to have good quality life in every facet of them as a person? And when we can do that, which is a very challenging problem, I'm not going to simplify that, but if we can do that, having someone be healthy, or even if they want to address their weight becomes that much easier, and it's easier for us to provide appropriate care. So
that's a great point. It's all well taken. Yeah. Well, 2020, new year, new decade, some new food trends we're going to talk about.
I mean, honestly, I think one of the biggest trends we're going to see more of is more vegetarian and vegan options out there. I kind of smirk a little bit at this, because I feel like it's like the best time to be a vegetarian or vegan, because now it's so mainstream.
Are you?
I am not. I have been before in my former years, and there wasn't as much products around, so you're just kind of like, all right, well, I have to do a lot of food prep and a lot of cooking, which is fine, but when you're like a busy college student, which I was at the time, sometimes that's sort of prohibitive. But now you can apparently go to Burger King and get a veggie burger. So fast food is even an outlet for that. So it's been very interesting how we've started to embrace these alternatives. And I think part of it is a health conscious movement. You know, people are looking for ways of reducing red meat in their diet still. I don't think that message is necessarily going anywhere. And then I think part of it is that more awareness of how our food industry affects our environment. And I think more people are looking for more sustainable options. So if we look towards more vegetarian foods or meatless Mondays as options, but then still have a product that feels like you're eating meat. And some of these newer products out there are using new technology so that it does seem like we're eating meat. I've had many, just even people in my life who are maybe vegetarian or vegan will say, I thought at first the waitress had brought me the wrong thing because it tasted so much like meat, I got nervous. And they had to convince me that I was actually eating this vegetarian burger. So the Impossible Burger, the Beyond Meat products, these have been really, really great for people who are looking for alternatives to meat, but still kind of miss the taste of meat. We're also looking for very high concentrated protein sources. Beans, legumes, tofu, they have protein, but you have to eat a lot more of those foods to get this similar amount. So sometimes people are on special diets or have circumstances where they need to get a lot more sort of bang for the buck, and these products work really well.
Yeah, you're seeing so much more of plant-based products coming out there. Another, let me just throw out one example, cauliflower.
Oh, I know.
Cauliflower pizza crust.
I know, it's like the superstar of the veggie world. Everyone's doing everything with cauliflower. There's nothing cauliflower can't do. Which I don't.
But taste-wise, you wouldn't know.
No, I think it's great. Anytime people are getting more vegetables in their diet, I'm for it. It's one of the beautiful things to come out of this low carb movement is people are replacing some of those carbohydrates with vegetables, which there's very few instances I meet someone and I'm like, I think you're eating too many vegetables. That's not a thing. So if we can incorporate more of those healthy alternatives and not even just say you don't eat the carbs, but maybe half the carbs are replaced with vegetables. I mean,
it seems to be getting, if you get people more familiar with certain products. You mentioned earlier quinoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty widespread now. Is it a good protein?
It's a good protein, and it's a natural carbohydrate. It's a whole grain. I think it's actually technically a seed, and depending on if you like the taste of it, it's a great alternative or another just different option that's very versatile. So it's a great way of incorporating new foods too. I think with kids, it doesn't look weird, so it's easy to kind of throw in there. But it's also mainstream. You can get it at any grocery store. It's a little funny as a lot of people don't exactly always know how to pronounce it. So I have a lot of patients who come in asking about it.
It's not spelled how you pronounce it.
It is not. So that's only like the one kind of awkward thing about it. But it is kind of still considered one of those superfoods that we see a lot of. But that being said, if you don't like it, that's also okay.
Yeah.
I think some people feel a little pressure sometimes of eating very specific things and saying, well, if quinoa is really good for me, I am supposed to eat it, but I don't really like it. It's like, all right, well, find something else you like then. And if that's, brown rice or wild rice, if that's spelt, if that's farro, if that, play around with it.
Yeah.
There's no one right way to do anything.
And speaking of a lot of, I wanted to ask you about what I see a lot of when I look at the milk section of the supermarket now. You're looking at milks that are oat, soy, almond, rice. I could probably go on.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have
any
opinion on that?
I mean, for those things, it's more based on, I think, what is your goal? What are you using it for? And then do you have any digestive intolerances or allergies or things that we're trying to avoid? Lactose intolerance is very common. And I think a lot of people probably have lactose intolerance and don't realize it. Because sometimes the symptoms can be mild but uncomfortable, but people kind of push through. So if you're trying to avoid dairy milk, there are so many options now that are great. It just depends on what you're looking for and what you like the taste of. But there's really kind of no wrong answer. And it's a great way. A lot of them are fortified with the calcium and the vitamin D you would get from cow's milk. So it can be a good source, especially of vitamin D, which is hard to get from food.
All right, so it sounds like into 2020, and we're going to continue with trying to keep people away from processed foods as much as we can and just into more healthier fruits, vegetables, and protein.
Yeah, I mean, if it's kind of one of those things where if you're eating mostly whole foods, foods that look kind of like the way they started, you actually feel full longer. You get more satisfaction from those foods. They usually taste better. But at the same time, your body is going to get a lot more nutrition and it's going to work better. And I have many patients who come in after we get them eating more whole foods, and they'll say kind of simple things like, my hair feels nicer since I started eating this way. Or, someone saw me the other day and said I was kind of glowing. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're getting nourishment. Like, this is the way your body's supposed to be. And I said, how do you feel? And they're like, I feel really great. I'm like, all right, so I want you to remember this, because this is the point of eating healthy, is to feel good. And if food doesn't make you feel good, then you're maybe not getting what you need, and it's not working for you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Any final thoughts? We've covered a lot, haven't we?
I hope so.
I think we have.
I would say a final thought is there's no right way to eat. It really is just about what's right for you. So if you're starting something and it's difficult, that's not a failure on you. That just means you need to find an alternative that does work for you. And there's no shame or guilt associated with eating, or at least there shouldn't be. Food is something we should enjoy. Food is necessary for life. And, everyone deserves a diet that works for them and makes them feel good. So I always tell patients, it's not, is this good or is this bad? How's this working for you? If it's not working, then we got to fix it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time.